Ananda, the question of the human soul, the immortal soul, has been a fundamental concept of Western philosophy and theology. How does Buddhism look at the concept of soul and also its understanding of reincarnation?
The very important concept of soul has been developed a few centuries before the Buddha by the Upanishadic thinkers of India. And they, in fact, thought in terms of a universal soul, which at a particular time split up into myriads of pieces. And these myriads of pieces are the individual souls of all living things, living beings. And that's how their philosophy was developed around the centrality of the soul. And this soul be in a situation of suffering because it has separated from the universal soul and is not seeing its identity. And the ultimate bliss was to be attained by the knowledge, the realization that the individual souls and the universal soul is one and the same. In other words, recognizing the universality and the oneness of everybody.
And ultimately the rejoining?
Rejoining, ultimate rejoining. Buddha came into that scene, and Buddha was reacting to that particular concept, and it was difficult for him to accept anything that could remain outside the first principle of reality that he identified. You know, the way the Buddha started preaching was, he had a sermon prepared for the people who were with him. At the time, he gave up practicing very difficult penances. You know, Buddha's preparation for Buddhahood was one in which he learned various meditational techniques. Then he went on a period of fasting and penance. And then 5 monks were very happy to be his attendants. Then suddenly Buddha found that's not the way, so they left him. So that sermon that he gave them, which is called the first sermon of turning the wheel of doctrine, starts with the statement that's where the middle path. Avoid the extreme of luxury, avoid the extreme of the self-mortification. And then Buddha went on to 4 truths, and he said, I have realized 4 truths. There is suffering, which is universal. Then this suffering is caused by desire. So the second truth is the desire, the cause of suffering. There is an end to this suffering, which is possible, it is attainable, and that is the third truth. And the fourth is the eightfold path to reach that state of he taught this to 5 people, and of these 5 people, only one person attained that level of understanding that the Buddha accepted. So the next day he reworded his sermon and started with, let's understand the existence of reality or the existence of everything. First principle is impermanence. What is impermanence? Causes suffering. And when things are impermanent and when things are full of suffering, can you tell to yourself, this is mine, this is me, this is myself? Because you have no control over that at all. So in Buddhism, the word anatta, which in Sanskrit would have been anatman, is used to say there is no atta or no atman. Now, this can have 2 meanings. One meaning is there is no soul. And the early translators said Buddhism teaches soullessness. Second is to say there is no entity that is permanent and eternal which you can call yourself, which is controlling you from within. So today we have a lot of discussion in the Buddhist circles, and particularly outsiders who try to first understand Buddhism. How can Buddhism negate the soul altogether? First, we don't have a common understanding of what the soul is. What we mean today by soul is there a connection between one life and another? The Buddhist will say, certainly. It is that one consciousness that came into the other life. And if you want to call the consciousness the soul, it is only a use of word. But Buddha's idea of Atma is, that doesn't belong to you. You can't call this yours because you can't even tell you that tomorrow let me not get a headache. Huh? If the headache comes, you get it.
Yeah, right.
So, he said, you can't avoid death, you can't avoid old age, you can't avoid all kinds of disappointments. Therefore, you don't have anything that you can call your own. So we say that anatta can have two meanings. One meaning is there is no entity which is permanent. And two is there is no self which you can call your own. And Buddha's idea was to emphasize the second. Again, it is a way to teach us detachment. So there is nothing for us to grasp on.
So how then does this relate to the Buddhist teaching of reincarnation?
Yes. This is where we do not talk in terms of reincarnation, because reincarnation, by the very definition,
Yes.
even the dictionary definition, means something permanent is taken a new body. Now, Hindu concept is reincarnation. In the sense, in the Bhagavad Gita, which is the foremost the book of spirituality in Hinduism, they say that the permanent soul takes on new bodies with every life, just as we throw away our worn-out clothes and take something new from the wardrobe. So that is the owner is the soul, and he changes clothes. That is the concept.
In Hinduism.
Hinduism. Buddha was not able. You see, the Buddhist idea had to be always understood as to what he was negating, what he was criticizing in the context of Hinduism.
Yes.
So he was not able to accept that. But we believe in what is called re-becoming. That's why it is the same and not still the same. I may have been somebody. I don't know who that somebody is. But today we have certain amount of information which have been adequately tested of people who remember, who can relate to some past birth memories. Particularly the research that was done in the University of Virginia by Ian Stevenson. He did about 2,600 cases all over the world, where people remembered past lives, particularly children. Then went back to those places, checked some of that information, and some of the information was so very I would say convincing, in the sense that if a child starts using a text that was not used in your country, it was not in a language was not used in your country, and you could trace where that text has been practiced, there is certainly an explanation needed. So being a scientist, the conclusion was these are suggestive of reincarnation. But he used the word reincarnation. Buddhists wouldn't call it reincarnation. Buddhists would say re-becoming, a consciousness that can keep on moving from one life to another.
Because it's the same consciousness, but it's totally changing of what its essence is.
Yes.
So it's becoming and not becoming in this process.
That's right.